I hear it. I hear it.
Everyone, how are y'all? Good. I'm glad to see you all here. This is the first District 2 2026 budget meeting that we're having. And it's important, I think, for all of us as residents of Fort Worth to know what goes into our budget. Why? Because the allocation of money affects all of us, right? What we expect from city services, what we hope to see, maybe more of or less than, depending on what we're talking about. So I'm going to give you a quick overview, and then after me, we're going to see a video. Following that, we're going to have Christiane Simmons, who is from our Fort Worth lab, our data and analytics department, who's going to give us a deeper dive into our city budget. If you look around the room, interspersed, you'll have a lot of city department heads, leaders, assistant city managers, and I appreciate all of them being here. If y'all can all stand up instead of me calling you out one by one. Okay. And our Fort Worth Police Department, thank you very much. All of us for being there, and I see our NPO. Thank you, NPO Versenos, for being here. All right. And thank you to our community center staff also for hosting this event. All right, so our budget grows each year, it seems. And this year is no different. It has grown. And just to give you an idea, let's talk about public safety, because public safety is something that's first and foremost on everyone's mind. All right, so are you ready for this one? The budget reflects a 68% growth from last time. That's pretty big. So how does that break down? Well, it breaks down in three categories: EMS, police, and fire, right? And individually, they all have respective needs. If you'll keep in mind and remember that what we did on July 1st is we launched the city's fire-based EMS. We replaced MedStar, the ambulatory services, with a fire-based system. That's a huge undertaking that the city did. Why did we do that? We not only did it to improve response times, but we also did it to get more coverage, right? We need more ambulances, we need more teams out there, trained teams that can respond to emergencies in the fastest fashion possible. We have a metric that total travel time, 8 minutes, and that's what we're holding to, and our fire department is working to achieve that. All right, now investing in our people, that's something very important because a growing city needs staff. We have wonderful staff members at the city right now, but we need to supplement those folks with good employees as well. So what are we doing? All right, pay for performance. That reflects an investment from the city as well. We also paid for a study that looks at recruitment and retention of those city employees. So we're building for the future, and what I mean by building is infrastructure. That's something that all of us are affected by, right? When we drive around, we see a pothole, you probably think of me or you think of city officials to say, why haven't they fixed that pothole yet? Well, I have good news. The city's TPW department has set it up so that every reported pothole can get fixed in 48 hours, within 48 hours. That's a pretty good response for a city our size, but you got to report it. That's why we have the My Fort Worth app. So again, for those that have it, appreciate it very much. For those that don't have it, you can download it from the city website. It's free. Do it. I use it too to report a lot of these things as well. Okay, so physical stewardship. City manager has dictated and expected from staff to have some cuts, roughly 1% across the board. We're trying to be very, responsible financially with our city dollars. And so we're looking at places that we can cut to enhance our efficiencies. So expect to see that right there. We looked at our fee structures and we try to cost align that and also compared it with peer cities. And so with these strategic cuts, with these reductions, we hope to achieve our budget. Keep in mind, the state mandates, we have to have a balanced budget. And that's what we aim and strive for. All right, let's talk about something that always elicits a great response from folks. Tax, right? Taxes, the tax rate. What are we doing there? All right, we have a current tax rate of 0.6725 cents, all right, for $100 of evaluation. All right, so what does that mean to you? Well, there is a reduction, all right? It's a 1/4 cent reduction that you'll see. May not sound as much, but even in tight budget years like this one, we're looking for ways to deliver any kind of tax relief to you, the residents. So I don't want to drone on too much, but this summarizes some of the major categories that you'll hear about tonight. And again, we'll watch a video here as soon as I sit down, and then the mic turns over to Christiane, and she'll explain it further and in depth. So again, thank you all for being here. Appreciate it very much. And I hope you learned something, and we'll have Q&A at the end. Thank you.
Fort Worth reflects smart, strategic growth, benefiting from a fast-growing economy, safe and clean neighborhoods, and a high quality of life for all residents. This year, we reached a historic milestone, 1 million residents strong. With that growth comes opportunity to invest wisely and plan sustainably for the future. For fiscal year 2026, the city is proposing a $3.09 billion budget, including a $1.1 billion general fund, focused on 5 city council priorities: community safety, infrastructure, community investment, economic development, and responsible growth. We are enhancing community safety by adding neighborhood police officers, providing full-year funding for our brand-new EMS service, and launching a new emergency management and communications department. And just as safety is essential, so is the infrastructure that keeps our city moving. We're prioritizing street maintenance and 2 major water treatment facility projects, while strengthening staffing to ensure crucial infrastructure projects are delivered on target. Our neighborhoods remain at the heart of our plan, supported by strengthening the priority repair and neighborhood improvement programs, expanding the mobile toolshed program to assist more homeowners, and adds resources to our animal shelters. By strengthening the places we live, we also lay the foundation for a thriving local economy. To boost economic growth, we're launching a small business development program and upgrading the Will Rogers Complex and Convention Center. We're delivering for today and planning for tomorrow. This is reflected by updating service fees for water, stormwater, solid waste, and environmental protection to improve flood mitigation and ensure sustainable operations. And through PAYGO funding, a small but powerful portion of your property tax, we're increasing investment in street and park maintenance. Over the past decade, Fort Worth has kept budget growth in check, thanks to consistent tax rate reductions. The proposed tax rate of 67 cents is a decrease from last year. The typical household with a homestead exemption will pay less in city taxes this year. Out of the 67-cent property tax rate, over 52 cents funds operations and maintenance, and 14 cents goes towards debt. We maintain a fiscally responsible strategy and a strong credit rating, enabling the city to fund upcoming bond programs. The City Council will review the budget throughout August, with a final vote on September 16th.
All right. Ooh, hi. That's a bright light. Like to thank communications and public engagement both for staffing these events and for that lovely budget video. I feel like they're doing a nice job on their content, so thank you to the CPE staff here. And thank you for being engaged with the budget on a weeknight. I know it's not easy to get to a public meeting, but we sure appreciate it. We've been doing these all around town, and it really makes the process worth it when you come with your questions and engagement. My name is Christiane Simmons, as the council member mentioned, and my role is with the city's Fort Worth lab. We are the data and analytics shop, as he mentioned, and we also manage and develop the budget each year. So as soon as we're done with this budget, we'll turn around and start developing the next budget. It's kind of a year-round thing in our office, but we love it. And so we're really happy to be here with you to talk about the budget and answer some questions. So I'm going to tag team this tonight with another Fort Worth Lab staff member. We have, I think, about 20 slides just for expectation setting, but we want to leave plenty of time for any pre-submitted questions and any questions you might have as we go along, so just take notes and we'll have time to talk. All right, so every year when we begin to develop the budget, a number of themes emerge, and sometimes those themes are the same year over year, and then sometimes they're unique to that particular year. So one of the themes that's really the same year over year is our growth as a city, and you certainly know that as residents of the city. We are growing at a rapid rate. We hit 1 million residents last year, and that comes with a lot of opportunity, but also a lot of complexity and challenge. And so obviously we're looking all the time at good decision-making framework and trade-offs to really balance that growth within the city's operating and capital budgets. Something that was a little different this year was the evolving property tax landscape. So the city's biggest source of revenue is property tax for our operating. And we sit in 4 different appraisal districts, but the largest is Tarrant. It's about 95% of our revenue comes from Tarrant Appraisal District. And some of you might know, especially homeowners in the room, that Tarrant Appraisal District adopted a reappraisal plan that was a little different than something we'd seen before. And they opted to only reappraise residential property every other year, which is an attempt to provide taxpayer relief. That's their objective. And for us on the city side, we were really not sure what that would do to our year-over-year value, because again, so much of our revenue comes from property taxes. So early on in this budget season, we were modeling a lot of different scenarios, thinking our revenues would be even more constrained perhaps than usual. And then the council member did a great job of talking about fiscal responsibility. This is certainly a high priority for city council and city management, really trying to balance that growth but stay efficient and focus on core services. And so with a new city manager in the seat this year, this is his first budget as city manager, though he's been around the city, I think he says, for like 26 budgets. He wanted departments to take a really surgical look at their budgets. And so from the get-go, he asked departments to constrain, to reduce by 1%. That saved us about $7 million in the general fund right off the bat, because again, we were really thinking about having to work from constrained revenues. And then we actually did some additional reductions as well, which we can talk about a bit, how it all balanced out. And then each year, when we do the budget, we look at fees and rates across the city for all our different lines of service. That's a necessary exercise. Sometimes it doesn't result in anything, and then sometimes it results in recommendations for changes in fees, actually sometimes decreases, but more often increases for capital planning or long-term planning. And so we have some of that this year as well. And then when it comes to growth, so much of that is about capital, both on the maintenance side and then like capital infrastructure. And so a couple of levers that we didn't really want to pull this year have to do with our capacity for capital. So the first of those is PAYGO. So you might have mentioned or seen in the video, it talked about PAYGO. That is a portion of your property tax rate that's dedicated to cash funding capital maintenance. So instead of issuing debt for street maintenance or park maintenance, rather, we pay cash for that year over year through the property tax revenue. So we did not want to reduce that because we know, as well as you know, that the need for maintenance is not reducing. And so we're really trying to be smart with those dollars. And then similarly, we did not want to reduce the amount that we put toward debt service, which also comes from the property tax rate. We not only have to pay our existing debt, but we want to preserve all of our future bond capacity at the rate of its current, because again, growth, capital infrastructure, that comes from bonds. You know, we have one coming up in 2026. So we did not want to reduce that portion of the property tax rate either. So this budget for fiscal year 26 is not necessarily a year where we're adding a lot of new personnel and services. It's very much a maintenance year. I've been trying to be creative within our existing resources. So we're able to sustain levels of service for police, fire, and EMS. As the council member mentioned, public safety is top of mind always. And then additional PAYGO dollars, those are those pay-as-you-go capital dollars for street maintenance, which is our other really big priority from the residents that we hear about through community surveys and council offices. And then we also looked a lot at community investment. So there's some interesting program expansions in this year's budget that we'll talk through. So just to do a little bit of level setting, like at a high level, the city council actually has adopted strategic priorities, which sometimes people don't know about. So these are the 5, so now you know. And the city council officially adopted these last year, and they're set to sort of revisit these every other year and the strategies that are beneath them every year. So that's a new cadence that the city council has just started. We want to make sure, obviously, that every decision council makes, but including budget allocations, are tied to one or more of these priorities. Otherwise, you know, where do they really fit? Now, these are fairly broad categories, but we kind of like to talk in terms of these priorities as we think about the way that we're resourcing the different city services. So the first of those is public safety. Councilmember Flores did a great job teeing up the conversation around EMS. So we went live with city-owned fire EMS as of July. Wow, what a year. July 1st of 2025. So next budget year will be the first year that we're fully funding that service under the city's umbrella. So you can imagine that was a very big conversation, you know, for over a year as council really decided that, and we began to look at what that would be like under the city structure. Also in this budget, more of a consolidation and restructure than something new, but we funded a new emergency management and communications department. So this was mostly a consolidation of existing resources in police and fire and the Office of Emergency Management, but gave it really good strategic leadership through some hiring decisions of a director and an assistant director. And this encompasses not just emergency management, so things like the World Cup that's coming or like a winter storm, but also emergency communication, so think like 911 emergency communications. And so we're really excited about that more targeted effort where they're a department with great leadership, they have performance metrics, and now they have an official budget. And then on the police side, we added additional neighborhood patrol officers. So your NPO is here, and I know many people know and love their NPO. That's a great program. And the police department did a beat study over this last year, maybe more than a year, and we just got the results of that in the last couple of months. As you can imagine, the beats need to be sort of revisited, redesigned as the city grows. And so as a result of that study, police added 12 new beats and needed 8 new NPOs just based on the way those lines sort of broke down. So in this budget, we're adding those NPOs. That's a CCPD program. And then similarly, also in CCPD, we're adding a couple of school resource officers. So those are the officers that staff the schools. And so Fort Worth ISD requested some more of those. We split those with them 50-50. And so that's another budget add for next year. So infrastructure, just as important as public safety, and another one that we hear a lot about. So we've talked about street maintenance. In the current year budget, we gave more money to street maintenance, and we're doing that again for fiscal year 26. Again, that's mostly through prioritizing pay-as-you-go dollars. The other thing that's happening with street maintenance in this budget is the studying of a potential street maintenance fee. So as engaged residents, you may have heard some whispers about this over like the last year or 2 years. And really, I mean, the street maintenance fee conversations date way back to when Councilmember Flores was on, what was that committee? The Blue Ribbon Task Force, I think, 2008. So it's kind of, and I think we were going to call it a transportation user fee back then. Some cities call it that. Anyway, council and the residents would sort of like us to revisit what this might look like. You know, what would it look like to set up a street maintenance fee to close our street maintenance gap? You know, who would pay it? What would the drivers be? Residential, commercial, industrial, like all those kinds of questions. So we're not recommending that fee in this budget, but we are recommending a study to see what that might look like for future years. So that's something that will be happening in fiscal year 26. We already started that process last year, so we're going to kind of continue that. This budget also, maybe this doesn't affect you too much day to day, but maybe it does because you notice capital projects going on all around your district and around the city. In this budget, we're adding some resources for capital project delivery. So there are a number of capital project delivery positions and services that we sometimes outsource to consultants. That might be inspections or engineers, that kind of thing. A couple of departments kind of made a pitch this year and said, we think we can do this more efficiently in-house and more cheaply in-house. And so we're going to let them try to do that to really make sure that we're delivering capital projects on time, on schedule, with in-house accountability. So that's an exciting thing for the city and for employee investment next year. And then there are a couple of really big water projects in fiscal year 26 that have been planned. As you probably know, the water department's not just a city department, it's a regional utility that serves, you know, not just the city of Fort Worth. And so they have an expansion of the Eagle Mountain Water Treatment Plant in fiscal year 26 that will really begin. And then Mary's Creek Water Reclamation Facility is another big capital project. Talked a bit about community investment. So think about your neighborhood and your housing, those kinds of programs. A couple of things to highlight here. The city already has right now a priority repair program that's administered by Neighborhood Services. And the goal of this program is to keep people in their homes when they own a home, but maybe don't have the funding to address an emergency like an AC repair, for instance. And this program has a lot of demand. We fund it to the tune of $2 million right now. We're actually increasing that funding to $2.5 million in fiscal year 26 because we do have some significant demand for that program, and we want to help keep people in their homes. Another program that's expanding that was on a pilot this year is the Mobile Tool Shed, which is run by Code Compliance. This is a program that our new code director brought from Arlington, and we piloted it in a couple of neighborhoods this year to much success. The goal of this program is to kind of take away the I guess like the excuse or whatever for a code violation because you don't have equipment. So perhaps you're not able to mow or weed eat properly because you don't have access to that kind of equipment. So this program brings that equipment to you so that you can then use it, and then the mobile tool shed goes on about its way, and that's been helpful.
I'm just curious, how many people have heard of that program?
Mobile tool shed, okay, a couple of hands.
Right, how many have used it?
Anybody?
All right, remember, that's available. You don't have the tools, we got them for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure, I'm hoping, I'm betting that there will be some good communications and engagement maybe around that program since we're really expanding it for next year. So that's a great effort. The budget increases resources for animal services as well. So a good example of this is adding contractual labor for the animal shelters. There are some positions in the animal shelters that, as you can imagine, are difficult to keep staffed. One example is a kennel technician. It's just work that's difficult if you kind of think about what that person would do. And so we don't want animal services to lag when those positions turn over. So we've added some contractual labor in this budget so that we can kind of infill when there are vacancies so that the animals and the staff and residents don't suffer from that turnover. This budget also continues the neighborhood improvement program. We do one of those a year. In fiscal year 26, we'll do another one. We're still catching up on some neighborhoods that have had appropriations in the past, and so we've recommended to do one neighborhood next year as well. And then in next fiscal year, like fiscal year 27, we'll have a new library that opens in the far northwest. But in fiscal year 26, we'll have to hire and staff that library like before it opens and start to train, those branch folks. And so we're kind of taking that as a community investment win for the fiscal year 26 budget too. Economic development, another very important goal when it comes to attracting business to Fort Worth and helping to diversify the tax base. So in fiscal year 26, we are expanding our partnership with the local chambers. So that's not just the Fort Worth Chamber, but also the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and the Metropolitan Black Chamber. You may have heard about some of this over the summer at the council level. There were some presentations about the small business development program. So this budget funds those partnerships. We're also funding a refresh of the Economic Development Strategic Plan. It's been a minute since we refreshed it, and we're getting a new director in the next few weeks. So we thought, well, this budget year will be a great time to revisit our strategy around economic development in the city, growing and changing so rapidly. It's a good time to look at those strategies again. On the public event side, there are big capital projects in fiscal year 26 for the Convention Center expansion, as well as the Will Rogers Memorial Complex. And then our budget also continues to just generally invest in economic development initiatives. So the general fund transfers money to a different fund, Economic Development Initiatives Fund, so that as economic development deals come together, we have a place to draw from for those things. And finally, responsible growth. So this is kind of a catch-all priority category. So we picked some highlights here, but as you can imagine, there's a lot of things that can fall within the category of responsible growth. But in fiscal year 26, we plan to continue and hopefully finish the 2050 comprehensive plan. So this is our long-range plan for land use and the like that tells us what we want Fort Worth to look like and feel like in 2050. As engaged residents, you may have even participated in comprehensive plan meetings over the last year. And so you'll have more opportunities to do that in the coming months, particularly in October when we'll do comp plan and bond meetings together. This isn't as much of a resident-facing thing. I mean, in some cases it is because these are the vehicles and equipment that serve projects and stuff, but we've also added funding for vehicles and equipment. We have quite a backlog of vehicles that are eligible to replace, and so we can't fund them all in 1 year. I don't even think we could actually procure them all in 1 year, but we are trying to take a little bit of a bite out of that gap, so we increased the budget for vehicle and equipment replacement in fiscal year 26. Councilmember Flores, I think, also mentioned the pay study that the city is in the middle of. And so not for civil service, but for basically all the other employees in the city, we're kind of in the middle to third or something, last third of a pay study that looks at job titles, job pay, classification, to make sure that we are recruiting and retaining talent not just among other large cities, but even sometimes the private sector is a competitor for us in this metroplex. And so we have a number of positions that are hard to fill in the city for whatever reason. We're trying to find out why. And so we don't know yet what the results of that study are going to be, but we definitely want to have resources available to begin to implement maybe some of the low-hanging fruit of that study. And so we expect those to begin trickling in April or May, and we want to take recommendations to the city manager and to city council and say, hey, we want to draw down this bucket and start to close some of these gaps, whatever the study does find. And then we'll talk a little bit more about fee structures later in the presentation, but again, we really revisit fees and rates as part of the annual budget process, and there are a couple of fee and rate changes that we're recommending. In water has a redesigned tier structure, so there's, we'll talk about it on the taxpayer bill slide, but most folks won't see an increase in their water rate. There's a small increase on the wastewater side, and then some fee increases in the environmental fee, solid waste fee, and stormwater fee, which all appear on the water bill. So we'll show you a mock-up of that in just a bit. I'm going to do a quick few slides on property tax and then turn it over to Christy. So again, property tax, the biggest source of revenue for the city. And in fiscal year 25, our revenue budget is built on the taxable value of $121.9 billion. So that's taxable value of all of the properties that are in those 4 appraisal districts I mentioned. So that's Tarrant, Parker, Wise, Denton. We weren't sure, again, with TAD's reappraisal plan, kind of what would happen with our existing values. So we were predicting everything from the growth you see here down to like totally flat growth and even sometimes negative growth, which would have been crazy. And that's because with TAD's reappraisal plan, if your house didn't get reappraised and you still protested your value, you may have like been awarded some of that protest, which would have caused the value to decrease. When our certified values actually came in July, which is when we get them at the end of July, we were happy to see 3.4% growth on existing values. Now, most of that is commercial, but that's okay, because we can only capture 3.5% of existing value growth anyway. So we were in a good spot there. Got a little more than we thought in some of our scenarios. And then the new construction value, we like to split it that way, existing and new. The new construction value is 2.5% up from last year. And that is a pretty good number for us. It kind of hovers between 2 and 3% year over year. And so we were happy to see that number too. So all that to say that our fiscal year 26 rate is built on a taxable value of $129 billion. And as the council member mentioned, our proposed tax rate is 67 cents per $100 valuation. That's a 1/4 cent decrease from this year's tax rate. So the current tax rate is 67 1/4. And on the right-hand side, I know it's a little small, but you can see the way that 67 cents breaks down. So on the bottom branch, that's our debt service portion of the tax rate. That funds our debt and preserves our future bond capacity, for example, for the 2026 bond that's coming up. And then the top branch is operations and maintenance, so that's the majority of the tax rate. And on the very top little box there, that 45 cents funds the general funds operations. So that fund is where, it's our main operating fund. That's where a lot of the core services sit that you might think of. So like police, fire, transportation, parks, etc. And then the bottom little branch of that O&M box is the 7 1/4 cents, that's pay-go. So pay as you go, that's that cash funded capital maintenance. I'm going to introduce Christy Lemon. She is also with the Fort Worth Lab. She's our assistant director over budget, and she will take you through just a couple more slides before we get to Q&A.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to cover some of the details in the recommended budget, and then we'll get right to questions. So this is the total operating budget that's being proposed for this next year. So it's just over $3 billion. The first row there is for the general fund. So as Christiane said, this is the fund that includes police, fire, code compliance, transportation, public works. And you'll see that it's growing about 4.5%. So we'll talk about where we spent that growth in that fund in just a moment. Couple of other highlights here. So you'll see the special revenue line increased quite a lot. The new emergency medical services is a special revenue fund. So that growth that you're seeing there is for the new EMS service that's being provided by the fire department. So that's what that big growth is there. Our internal service funds are things like our IT services and our fleet services. So if you drive a city vehicle and take it to get an oil change, we have a team that does that, and then they bill it back to other departments. So that's an example of an internal service fund. Our enterprise service funds we're going to cover in a moment. Those are some of our services that operate more like a business. But this is the overall high level for the operating budget for this year. This is a snapshot of the general fund. So you'll see at the top there, our two largest revenue sources are property tax and sales tax. And then on the bottom half of the slide, you'll see our expense categories. So these are pretty rolled up, pretty high level, but what you'll notice is that our biggest expense is for personnel, so our salary and benefits. And then the next line is our operations and maintenance, and you'll see that we had some reductions there. So that's for a couple of different reasons. One of them is the 1% reduction that all of the departments made when we first started out. They cut their budgets 1%. And then we took some other reductions through the budget process as well to be able to fund some of those new things that Christiane talked about. I'll talk about our drivers for growth in the general fund for just a moment. So the biggest driver there is public safety. So 68% of that growth, so remember we just looked at 4.5% growth in the general fund, 68% of that was for public safety. So 20 million of it is for a subsidy to the EMS fund. So our new EMS fund generates a lot of revenue through medical billing. So if they take someone in an ambulance ride, we'll bill insurance companies and recover some of the cost of that. But it doesn't fully pay for the service. So we're transferring $20 million from the general fund to the EMS fund to help subsidize that service. So that was a big chunk of it. And then we also have agreements with our police and fire organizations for labor costs. So this is basically the raises for police officers and firefighters that we're contractually obligated to. So those are always like first in the budget, so they're there. And you'll see a couple of things for workforce. So our general employees, not police and fire, but general workers, participate in a pay for performance program. So to get a raise each year, employees are awarded raises based on their performance, not based on a COLA or something like that. So this is our raise program for employees. And then the pay study implementation that Christiane just mentioned is in here as well. And then the last bullet there is for capital funding. So we increased our PAYGO dollars by 4.6 million this year to try to deal with some of those maintenance issues that we know y'all are all very interested in. Just cover a little bit about enterprise funds. So our enterprise funds, as I mentioned, operate more like a business. There's some examples here. So an easy one is parking. So if you go downtown and pay to park at a meter, or you go into a city parking garage, you're going to pay a parking fee. And then that fee that you pay goes back into the fund to help manage those facilities. So that's an example. We also have a municipal airport fund. We operate 3 airports in the city. And then the stormwater utility, which some of you are familiar with. You have a charge on your water bill for stormwater. And then the solid waste fund is responsible for trash and recycling services. So I know you all are familiar with that. And then your water and wastewater fund. So water and wastewater is the largest of our enterprise funds. Our water department operates a regional utility, so it's not just City of Fort Worth residents, but many others purchase water services from us as well. So that's a big fund there that you see. Our special revenue funds include things like the Crime Control and Prevention District. So a lot of you are familiar with that one as well. It's also called CCPD, so sometimes you see that abbreviated. And that revenue is generated from a half-cent sales tax. So when folks buy something in Fort Worth, a half-cent of that sales tax goes directly into the CCPD fund. And that funds lots of different law enforcement initiatives, crime prevention initiatives. Then we have a public events fund. So the folks that operate that fund are responsible for managing the convention center and the Will Rogers Memorial Complex. And then we have the new Emergency Medical Services Fund, or the EMS Fund. So you'll see that one doesn't have any history because it's a brand new one. So the total amount budgeted for next year for that fund is $89 million. And as we said before, about $20 million of that is a subsidy from the general fund. Then we have environmental protection. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But that fund covers things like air quality, hazardous waste cleanup, and then that team also does a lot of work in the communities cleaning up homeless camps and things like that. So it has to do with really keeping things looking neat and tidy around the city. Then we have the Municipal Golf Fund and also the Community Tree Planting Fund. So those are all our special revenue funds. This is probably what you're really interested in tonight. So this is a typical bill for an average taxpayer. So in the top row there, we have the value of the average taxable value of a home in Fort Worth. So this is a blend of all 4 of the appraisal districts. And this property already has the homestead exemption applied to it. So under this proposed budget, the homeowner would save about $20 on their annual tax bill. So that's that quarter-cent reduction in the property rate is resulting in about a $20 savings. And then we'll get to our fees. So the stormwater fee is increasing 35 cents per month. And that's to handle some of the really big capital maintenance projects that fund is responsible for. Then we have the water and wastewater charges. So as Christine said, no change on the water side. There's about a 64-cent per month change on the wastewater side. So this is on average, depending on your usage. And then for solid waste, we're seeing a $3 a month increase. So we haven't had an increase in garbage and recycling service charges since 2003. So a very long time since we've seen an increase in that charge. So there's a $3 increase proposed for this year. This is really important for our future because our landfill is starting to fill up. So we got to plan for the next 10, 20, 30 years. And so we need a little bit more there to work with. And then the environmental fee that I just talked about is increasing 75 cents a month. So the total increases per month for those fees is just under $5, so $4.74. And then you have that $20 a year offset in property tax savings. So the impact to this average taxpayer is about $3 more per month than you were paying in the last budget year. So that's the proposal. We'll talk for a second about our capital improvement plan. So every year we do a capital improvement plan. It's a 5-year rolling plan. And so this year you'll see that the number there is really big for FY2026. We have some really big projects coming that we've been planning for a long time. So those are the 2 big water projects that Christine talked about, and then also a big convention center project. So some of you might be aware of that. It's been a lot in the paper about that. So those are the really big capital projects that we have planned. If the bond election passes, or if some of those propositions pass, then those dollars will be folded into this capital planning as well. But they're not in here at this point. So this is just what we're planning without that bond election. This shows how we're spending some of the PAYGO dollars. So I know it's kind of small, so I'll walk you through it. The blue bar is the current fiscal year, and then the green bar is the future proposed year. So you'll see that top section is for transportation and public works, and that green bar is growing faster than all the other green bars. So we put some additional dollars toward street maintenance for the Transportation and Public Works Department to manage. So that's where that growth is. The Park and Recreation Department also got a little bit more than others in terms of maintenance dollars. So this is where the PAYGO dollars are going. And then this is a summary of the total overall budget. So current year's budget is about $3.6 billion, and then the future proposed budget is almost $4.5 billion. So we've been doing these meetings all around the city. They're posted on our website. If you want to go back and watch any of them, we have one more opportunity next Monday evening. So if you know someone who missed out but would like to participate, they can either attend the meeting or they could watch from home and send in their questions. So they can do it right from home if they want to. And then we are working toward adoption on September 16th. So next Tuesday, the City Council will take a vote on the proposed budget. So we'll be having a public hearing. If you want to come and speak at the public hearing, it'll be available to you. And with that, we will take questions. So as we take questions, we're going to bring microphones to you. We are streaming the meeting tonight. So if you don't speak into the microphone, the folks at home won't be able to hear your questions. So just be patient with us while we run around with the microphones. Right. Who has the first question? We're ready.
I need a new pole. The light pole is broken.
Okay. Someone from Transportation and Public Works is here, and they can talk to you this evening about the light pole if you'll tell them where it is.
Not my house.
Okay. So
At
after the
corner,
meeting, you can
at the
share.
corner, this one, that pole right there, this way.
Okay. Okay. We definitely want to know about that so we can get that fixed.
Okay.
So Transportation Public Works folks are in the back of the room here, and they'll find you right after the meeting, and you can give them the address. Thank you so much. Right.
Else?
Other questions?
Okay.
You got to stump us at least once. What's that?
Great opportunity. It can cover any city department.
Okay.
City services you may be curious about, what we're doing, where you want to see more, from us. Here's the opportunity. So,
Yeah.
question.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be just about the budget. We have lots of city staff in the room, so if there's something you've been wondering, we're happy to help.
I have a question. There were 2 bills passed in the last legislative session, SB 840 and SB 2477, I believe, that allows developers to build residential property on commercial zoning and in commercial buildings by right. Commercial properties earn a lot of money for the city. So that's cannibalizing a big part of your revenue. So how are you going to compensate for that, and what are you doing to defend yourself?
We're going to let Dana Bergdorf answer that one.
Yay, thank you. So I know that the Development Services Department recently hosted an open house to talk about that, and I wasn't able to participate, so I don't know if they discussed any of the ideas that they had about that. But I will say that with regard to property tax revenue, multifamily, in terms of dollars per square foot or dollars per acre, actually generates about the same or more in some cases than commercial property. So on a property tax side, it's not actually that different, particularly if it's Class A multifamily. I think where you might see a difference is if it's sales tax. So if it were retail, where you had potential sales tax revenue, then that might be a concern. But if it's vacant property and it's going to be developed, then certainly development is on vacant property would be a net positive to the city, because you'd have development where there was previously vacant land. So that would be a net positive to the city. If it's a conversion, typically it's converted because it's a vacant building. So often that's a vacant office or a vacant hotel that converts to multifamily. But I think mostly what you're going to see is developers taking advantage of vacant zoned commercial property that they're going to develop as multifamily. So most likely what's going to happen is it's going to be vacant land that's going to become developed as multifamily. So at the end of the day, it's going to add tax base to the city rather than be a net loss to the city.
The law also restricts the city's ability to control materials used, and it also it has no limit on density, which creates another whole host of problems for the city. I'm very concerned about the quality of the construction and what that stress that puts on city services. We've had a Cooper apartment fire when there was oversight, and now we're going into an era when there's very little oversight. We could have Cooper apartments popping up all over the city.
Yeah, so I don't think anyone's here from the fire department, but the Cooper fire, they actually met fire code, they met building code, so it wasn't a construction quality issue that was related to the Cooper fire. And the building materials, that's related to the exterior, like we can't require masonry, but we haven't been able to require masonry for years. The state legislature took that away from us years ago, so we haven't been able to control building materials for a long time. And then with regard to density, that's actually controlled more by the height of a building. And so, and the number of having bathrooms and all of that. So you still have to have bathrooms in every unit, and you still have to be able to comply with the height within the district. So for example, in our E and F commercial districts, the height is generally would allow about generally a 3-story building at 45 feet. And so that's the height limit. So that's going to limit how many units you can get within that building. You're right that it's unlimited density. So if they chose to perhaps have 1-bedroom units or studio apartments, then they would be able to get, say, more units than if they just did, say, 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom units. But we don't prescribe the number of bedrooms today in any of our multifamily developments. And so, it's just based on units per acre. So whether it's a studio or whether it's 3 bedrooms, it's still units per acre, if that makes sense. So the density tends to be prescribed more by the height than necessarily the density that's written into that. But again, on the materials, the state legislature took away the city authority to regulate that a couple of legislative sessions ago. Yeah.
All right, other questions?
No? Okay. Oh, good. Yes.
Great.
I'm coming.
It has to do with the My App, the Fort Worth app. If there was a way to make it a little bit user-friendly, because when you're a first-time user, you have difficult on how to determine where you're supposed to put an address, and it's difficult to try to maneuver through that. Even when you're searching what department that you would like to report, it's still difficult to find things like that. And does it always only have to be on the phone? Can you make it to where it could be used on your PC because it's a little bit bigger and easier to read, and you can type a whole lot better and a lot more and faster on it? So if there was a way that someone could probably reevaluate that and try to make it a little bit more user-friendly.
Thank you. We'll be sure and pass that along. Thanks so much.
Oh, good. Sorry. Oh, you're good.
With the growth in the stockyards area, I think it's great, of course, for the economic and everything that's going on. But one of the issues that we have in the area from I-35 going down Northeast 28th Street to the stockyards area, is anyone really looking at the flow of the traffic? More and more vehicles and commercial vehicles are coming through the residential areas, causing our streets to just get messed up. And sure, we can call and say there's a pothole, but it's not one pothole. It's a whole row going on. And I just wondered if somebody could help, because the growth is going and going and going, but our streets, trying to maintain them it's a lot. And I know probably they'll be said again, it's a state highway, but something has to be done.
Right, you are correct. It is a state highway, but the city does try to impart, our 2 cents, if you will, where improvements are needed. A few years back, we did a ULI study, and we had a stakeholder group, and we gave input to TxDOT prior to them starting the work that's still ongoing right now on 28th and Decatur, right? And I know there's been some issue with state funding that has caused some delays, but the work is still ongoing. I don't know when the completion date is. I've submitted some questions to the district director of TxDOT to provide them. They're supposed to give me an update in that regard. But as far as development is, as far as that's concerned, there is some upcoming development for some multifamily just north of the stockyards. One of the points of entry is going to be on 28th Street. So we're looking at that and how that impacts that. And in fact, one study already recommended another traffic light on 28th Street to try to manage some of that traffic flow.
And hopefully they get the lights to work with each other, because right now going down Northeast 28th Street to Main Street, the lights aren't together. So one light is red and this one's green, and the whole block is just blocked off. You can't even pass, can't move anything. It's by the Walgreens pharmacy. That light right there where Whataburger, Walgreens, and that grocery store, that light right there doesn't coincide with the one on Main Street, so it backs up all the way over 28th Street, and it's just stopped.
Well, we can ask TPW to take a look at the programming there, see if some changes need to be made.
That would be great. Thank
Okay.
you.
Good question. Thanks. Anybody else? I'm going to pick on some departments about water. Anyone with concerns about the water department? You know, well, sitting next to you is the expert on flooding. Jennifer, you want to tackle that one? We've done a lot of improvements. Her department has been really on the ball in taking care of it. But as more development comes to our city, the more impervious surfaces, yeah, it's going to increase the likelihood of flooding.
So I'll talk about the Lebo project for those. Is that kind of what you're referring to, the channel that runs through the Diamond Hill area? So the city of Fort Worth has been aware of and working on that flood mitigation project for a very long time. It's a huge effort. South of the railroad tracks, we've pretty much wrapped up all of the work. We've done bridge improvements to improve the flooding so it goes under the bridge and not over the road. So we've done a lot of those projects downstream. We bought a lot of very flood prone property and turned that into a green space. So now the upstream area is, we're at the process right now of applying for a $90 million grant funding. So fingers crossed, everyone. We have very good hopes that we'll be able to get this funding so we can do the improvements that we want to do up north of the railroad tracks. So right now we've applied for the funding and we're going kind of through a additional information request from the state. So this is state funding, it's not federal funding, which is a good thing with some of the recent federal changes. So I think it's more feasible that we'll be able to get it. We're also looking at already starting the process for some of the detention that we would need to build to do the channel modification improvements. So once we get that money, we'll take kind of a quicker pace. It won't take as long because we'll suddenly have the money that we need to do those improvements upstream. So it should be much faster than south of the railroad tracks. But we definitely, Lebo is one of our highest priorities. We really understand the impact that it's having on the community, and we're really trying hard to get this big bulk of money so we can knock it out much faster to bring that much needed mitigation to your area.
Thank you, Jennifer. And because so much work is needed on Lebo, it's historically a flood-prone area. When I started as council member, I met with Jennifer's team, and we devised a multi-phase approach to it. We weren't going to tackle it in 1 year, 2 years, or 3. We just had to set the pace and start taking it bit by bit. And so we're still working on it. There are improvements to it, as she described, but we still have a ways to go. But now we're just waiting for the next hopefully, funding tranche, and we can do more. Go ahead.
Some of the funding that we get for the community centers, is some of that money supposed to be used to take care of some of the baseball fields that are there? Like at Diamond Hill, that baseball field, I mean, you can't even tell it's a baseball field. It's lumpy, the grass was overgrown, because we were actually thinking of going to rent it out, but when we went over there to look at it, it can't be used. I mean, it is in horrible shape, and just wondered what monies or who's supposed to maintain that?
Okay, well, let me start with your most recent question. And I'm looking at Dave Lewis. He's our director of parks. Why parks? Because park is now taking over the responsibility of all our community centers. Dave, want to take a lap?
I'm actually going to pass it to Kyle.
Oh, okay, handoff. Lucky Kyle.
I think this is still on. I turned it off thinking Dave was going to answer that. So, yes, absolutely. So there are different classifications for fields, typically based on amenities that are located at the field. We have a large number of areas that have, over time, have fallen behind, and we have a process for trying to raise those back up. but it has to fall in line with all of our other improvements, obviously. So the way that a field classification typically works, we have a level 1 field, a level 2, and a level 3 field. A level 1 field usually has irrigation, lights, and fence, right? A level 2 field will have one of the others, and then a level 3 is usually like a backstop in a field or something like that. So I love to hear that people are trying to use it. Traditionally, level 2 fields have been used less, and so we've been prioritizing level 1 fields for maintenance needs, but I can definitely go by there and take a look at it and see what we can do.
Because I know you had to pay to rent it, which was not an issue at all, but when I needed to go look at that and take pictures, I was kind of disappointed that I had to say, no, please don't come. And so I don't, someone coming into our community that doesn't actually live in our area, I thought it was great that they were wanting to come in and utilize our services. And I thought, oh, that's a plus. We can get more people coming in saying, hey, this is a good place to go. And that's a way to get them to come in and see what our area does provide. But when we couldn't do it this one time, I was kind of disappointed in myself because I'm like, wow, I never even noticed that. I should have noticed that because I go to the neighborhood meetings and walk by, right by it all the time and never noticed it until someone asked me, hey, do you know about the field? Tell me if we can go use it and what we need to do. And when I saw it, I was very upset at myself for not ever noticing that. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to get on top of that and I'm going to find out what we can do.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So thank you.
We were talking to the right people.
I know, that's good to know. Thank you. All right, I'm done.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm Dave Lewis, the Director of Park and Recreation. Just to answer your first question, separate budgets for community centers versus athletics, and so it would actually fall under Kyle in the athletic division rather than the community centers. And you heard a lot about PAYGO. PAYGO is usually the type of funding that we would use to make those improvements, and so each year our allocation is about $3.5 million. So we try to figure out what are the highest priorities, and now hearing again that this is a priority, that's something that we can make sure to address in that. Unfortunately, in next year's PAYGO funding, we have 2 dams that we have to fix that add up to almost $3 million, so it kind of eats up a lot of it, the Lawfridge Dam at Northwest Park, and then also Barksdale Dam at Barksdale Park. But hearing that that's a priority is something we certainly can address.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. Do we have another question there? Sid?
Question about the community arts building that was vacated that the city owns. What is the plan for that, and will it ever be restored? Have arts people have a home because they all had to look for new homes when everybody had to move out?
That's a very good question. And right now there is no concrete solution to my knowledge. What I will tell you is this. Originally, the plan was that the arts organizations were to maintain the building, right? The city would provide the means for them to occupy the building, but they would have to provide basic maintenance. Over time, they have not been able to raise sufficient funds to do it. Then it came to a head, right, where it was impossible for them to do it. They came to the city, and the city is looking at this total price tag saying, well, it can't fit in our budget. We have to think of something else. Now, Dana, I'm not sure if you know what staff is currently thinking about that, or if there was any discussions further to the arts building.
I'll hand it to Dana, but I will say, we do have a small pot of funding set aside in the fiscal year 26 budget to study the future of 1300 Gendy. So I know that's something that the city manager wanted to prioritize, knowing that it's like a lingering question. Do you have anything to add?
For the arts. Yeah, for the arts.
Yeah, I think the Jay wanted our new economic development director, Jessica Rogers, who starts in another week or two.
That's what I heard, yeah.
Yes. To, I think, work with developers to see if there might be a redevelopment opportunity for that building. And so that was one of the things he was wanting our new economic development director to look at.
Yeah. So there might be hope, maybe through a public-private partnership, but we'll see.
Yep.
Thanks, Joe. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I could be totally off. I don't know if it falls in one of these categories, but I think it's a really big item, but the education, the school district does it fall in the community, or is that totally a separate issue?
The city does have a liaison, a department, and he's not here right now, but that's run by LT, as I called him, Mr. Thompson, and he interfaces with, the ISDs, Fort Worth ISD. In my council district, I have 4 ISDs. So there is funding in the sense of providing liaison support through that. We've all heard about the mayors taking steps to further, the goal of cooperation between the city and our ISDs, in particular Fort Worth ISD, since it's had its challenges as of late. So the funding is in there. To what amount, I don't know. Christiane, if you're more familiar with the numbers than I am, so.
I think it would just be his position funding and perhaps a small amount for his related expenses. I don't know of any. Oh, Deanna might know something more than me. Okay.
The position there is more focused on making sure that the ISDs are connected with the appropriate city department for infrastructure needs. But I will say that the library department and even some of the park and recreations have programming that's designed to meet the needs of the children and to kind of complement or supplement the ISDs. We don't really operate in the space of the education that's really left to the ISDs, but we try to look at programming that will complement it. So that's the effort. And I know just Tuesday night, there was a big recognition by the library department that has done some reading programs and assessments for individuals that might be, or children that might be struggling with different reading needs and really providing resources. And they were very complimentary of their children advancing in the reading literacy because of those efforts. So I know there's a lot of programming happening around the city.
Any other questions? Kind of silent on that side. There we go. We got one.
Has the city allocated any funds to capitalize on the World Cup for next year?
Very good question. Yes, we're not the only ones. We're doing that in cooperation.
That's a message coming from A&G Carter.
Yeah. We're doing that in cooperation with our regional partners. And what do I mean by regional partners? I'm talking about our neighboring cities, right? The city of Arlington, the city of Dallas, right? It's not all about Dallas. Certainly not all about Arlington or Fort Worth. We all share, in the success, the World Cup. So we're taking that approach, and I serve on the North Central Texas Council of Governments, and they're the organization that's bringing these resources together. So there is, that cooperation going on. I don't know if someone maybe from economic development can talk to us about what kind of expected economic benefit we can see from them.
Yeah, and so we're working very closely with Visit Fort Worth. It's managing kind of the economic boost that will come to the economy here in Fort Worth. So if you don't know, in Arlington, they'll be hosting, or Dallas will be hosting the World Cup, and there's 9 games that will be played at that stadium. So if you know anything about soccer, they have a huge fan following, and so we anticipate a lot of fanfare, a lot of guests, both local, domestic, and international. They will naturally and organically want to come to Fort Worth. And so we anticipate that there will be guests going to Stockyards, going to the Cultural District, going to maybe Panther Island. There will be events still hosted at Dickey's. So there will be a lot of economic boost to the area. We're managing from a city perspective our residents' needs, as well as just the guests, making sure that they're safe and secure. So there's a lot of internal working groups that are managing those different needs, making sure that we're working on everything from infrastructure to minimize traffic delays or traffic congestion that might occur as a result of construction. So managing those projects. We're also looking at just safety and security. So police, fire, EMS are working on a work group. They're working with our regional partners. So just as Councilmember Flores shared, we're not only Fort Worth, but it's Arlington, Dallas, and how do we partner together to make sure that we've got the right resources. There's also a beautification committee to just look at how is the city able to navigate, that we have the right wayfinding and signage for guests to navigate in and around. We do know that potentially TCU could have a base camp for one of the teams. And it just depends. It could be one team, it could be a couple of teams, just depending on how the brackets play out. So we are gearing up, we are prepared. It will happen between the month of June and July. We do know that the International Media Broadcasting Association will be located in Dallas. there will be efforts for them to come to Fort Worth. So we know that that overfill will happen. So just a lot of work that is being planned and prepared from a variety of different directions. And we're working with all of our regional partners, as well as just those that are interested in the economy. But we're interested in our residents. And so we want to make sure that you've got the right information, that our guests feel welcome and safe, but that you also feel welcome and safe to continue to be good stewards of the money that you've entrusted us with. So lots of efforts going on. There will be a website, and so we're working to make sure that we're connecting with Visit Fort Worth so that the same information is both on the visit side for guests, but then also on the resident side. And there might even be a little bit more information more specific to the city and how to navigate for our residents on the city side. But we do know, it's going to be we're going to have a global spotlight on Fort Worth. And so there will be a lot of opportunity for small businesses and local businesses to really benefit from that. And that's really what Visit Fort Worth will concentrate on. We're going to concentrate on city services and making sure that core services continue to be provided. And that'll be the focus of the city of Fort Worth. Anything you want to share?
Okay, any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I have a few residents who like to spin their tires and race down Clinton Street, especially from the middle of the 2900 block down to 28th Street. Who would I address that problem to? At 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, they're out there spinning their tires and racing, and the cars are spinning, and this has been going on probably for, I know, a year.
Well, you were in luck because that lady is here tonight. So Chelsea St. Louis and her department, one means of controlling issues like what you're describing. We don't do speed bumps anymore since 2007, but we do other speed mitigating devices like speed cushions. She can tell you about that, but first TPW has to evaluate it, but she can tell you more. Chelsea?
So that is correct. We have a neighborhood traffic calming program, and through that program, residents are able to request speed cushions. In terms of like the intersection takeovers or the donuts in the intersections, we really work with our MPOs and our traffic division to help with enforcement on those issues. We recently installed, probably in 2023, some speed cushions on Clinton Avenue. So I'll have to look back again at what the limits. Pardon me?
They're further up.
They're further up? Okay.
So in the middle of the 2900 block of Clinton down to 28th, they have enough room that they can get their kicks out.
So I'll follow up with you after the meeting and get your contact information, and we can definitely follow up on that.
I have another concern. I'm in a wheelchair, and I travel a lot, and I find that I don't always have access to sidewalks. So I try to travel with facing the traffic rather than having traffic at my back. So is there a department that handles repairing of the sidewalks? And also, people tend to park on the sidewalk. So even if the sidewalk is nice, I may still have to go out in the street. Some places I feel safe doing that. There are other places I think I'm putting my life on the line.
Yeah, I totally understand. And parking on a sidewalk or in front yard, that's against city regulations. That's enforceable by the police department. Okay, they're doing that now. As far as who's, can help you with that and give you some more information, we do have a representative from TPW here, and Lynn can tell you more. But what I can also share with you is that the city still is working towards providing ADA access, improving existing sidewalks to have those appropriate ramps set up so folks like yourself can easily access those sidewalks. Lane, you want to offer more?
I think honestly, Chelsea is probably better than me to speak to it, but I'll start. So we do investigate complaints with sidewalks. That's we're the first one that receives those. And then we'll go out and look in them and see if it's something that can be addressed. Generally, we don't have a sidewalk maintenance program. Maintenance per our city code of sidewalks falls at the adjacent property owner's responsibility. What we can do is try when there's an ADA issue to address that through our limited resources that we have. Chelsea's department does capital sidewalk construction projects. And so I'm going to hand it over to her because ultimately when we get some requests for sidewalks in, we send them over to her to evaluate and prioritize with her capital funding.
Yeah, so we do have an annual sidewalk program where we focus on installation of new sidewalks. So every request that comes in, we'll send a team member out to take a look at the sidewalks, see if it's something that can be installed with our PAYGO funding, or if it's something that has to go on an unfunded list and evaluated as part of a future bond program. And so if you, well, once I follow up with you on the other item related to the speed cushions, we can talk about what route you're interested in us evaluating, and we can take a look at it.
I was going to add one more thing real quick. The city just hired an ADA coordinator. Her name is Roxanne. I can't remember her last name, but she's very new. But one of her goals is to put together an ADA plan to start trying to identify and address ADA issues for the city. So I think that we'll see improvements in that area.
So I'll be able to get her information.
Yeah, and I can chat with you after and provide the information that you need.
Okay. My other concern is, and then I'll give up the mic. I live very close to the stockyard, and I enjoy going down to one of the stores in particular, and there's no access for my wheelchair.
Which store is that, man?
It's the general store there at Exchange in North Main.
Okay.
Okay. So, and also if you go up a block from heading north downtown, there's no way for me to safely cross. I sometimes can go several blocks up and cross on the light and then come down. But even still, once I get to down to Exchange, I can't access the store. I can't get off the curb because there's no ramp for the handicap. I got stuck there one night, and some people that were nice enough to help me get my chair off the sidewalk and to the curb so I could cross over to the other side where there was access ramp. So I'm really concerned about that because I don't let my wheelchair keep me at home.
Yes, ma'am. And I wish that Martin Phillips were here because we've been having meetings with him lately about the public infrastructure in the stockyards, in particular the sidewalks. You may have noticed that in the stockyards area along Ellis Avenue, there's been some work done on the sidewalks, right? You know, we're repairing sidewalks that exist and also filling in gaps that exist in the sidewalks. Haven't made it yet to North Main. There are some improvements that are coming out like bulb outs. You know, they're kind of an extension of the corner of the curbs that are coming to, you know, areas in the stockyards, which will help with the issue that you're, you know, talking about. Right now, I can't give you a timetable as when those will be done. All I can say is that that work has already started, but I don't know when, you know, that might be complete. I know that I have your number. I can talk to Mr. Phillips and then give you that information later. Yes, ma'am. All right. Bless you. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am. Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to go back to my drum, beating my drum on zoning. Will there be any consideration of doing a historical overlay over the north side, the stockyards, to protect it from overdevelopment of commercial?
Well, there exists already in the stockyards protections in that regard. You know, you have a historic core within the stockyards overlay, so that exists. And, you know, along the lines of what Dana Berthoff was talking about, the stockyards in the historic core area is protected from the concern that you were bringing up. So there are protections already built in just because of the historic, designations in the stockyards.
Even the ER and E's, the comma, the C, the properties, the zoning that would be affected by these new bills, that would still apply.
Okay. If they don't fall within the historic core, that's something else. But if it falls within the historic core, there are protections for it.
Second question is, we have no dedicated zoning inspectors. We borrow them from other areas, is my understanding. Do we have plans to add zoning inspectors and add development services and code people? Because I don't live in the north side, but I'm sure we share many of the same issues with shortages of code officers and shortages of development services people who are not always speaking the same language.
Right. I can't tell you off with any accuracy how many positions we're seeking to fill, but specific to inspectors for zoning, that I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not aware that, excuse me, that was loud. I'm not aware that Development Services is adding any zoning inspectors. I will mention that the Environmental Services Department recently took over commercial zoning enforcement from the Code Compliance Department. And so that has been put back with, I believe, the Consumer Health Division of Environmental Services. I'll let Dr. Cody Wittenberg address that.
Absolutely, thank you. So we do have 3 dedicated senior officers in our section, and they do look at commercial use and industrial use to include zoning violations. So if there's some properties you want us to take a look at, we'll get with you after the meeting and we'll take a look at them for you, okay?
All right, one more round. Anyone? Oh, Amerigo, yes, go ahead, sir.
Of course, that's to do with the golf courses. I was out there about 3 weeks ago saying they had an increase in green fees. They're going to have another one in another week. Now, can you explain why? Because Rockwood is always crowded. I know it makes money. But I could go to Bear Creek over the DFW for about half price. I go to Lake Arlington for about half price. I used to, when I played over there, you didn't have any cart girls or beverage carts. Now you at least have one. And also, when I go to Pecan Valley, the bridge is still out. So why the increase?
Sure. So as you've heard before, our budget process is a year-round process. For us in Parks, that actually starts as soon as the budget's passed. We do our benchmark of all of our fees, whether it be community centers or golf courses. We do benchmarks, and I happen to know golf does 35 other local courses, and we always strive to be right in the middle. So we classify our courses differently based on the visitor experience. So we try to price our courses along with the other ones that are in that same range of visitor experience. So all the prices are in that range for their level. We do strive to have more frequent, smaller price increases rather than waiting and having really big bumps. So that's probably why it seems more frequent. We're going to more of like an incremental increase rather than waiting so long. Hopefully that answers that part of it. As far as the bridge for Pecan Valley, we're in design right now to repair that. It's going to be about a $2 million fix. It's a complex problem because it's on the Corps of Engineer land, so there's a few more inspections and surveys that have to be done than we're per normal, but we hope we're probably, about 18 months away from that being fixed. It's a long process, and at the end of it, it'll be down almost 2.5 years, which is obviously unfortunate, but we're into the design phase of that right now. Thanks.
Thanks, Dave. And there was a recent MNC action on the topic of doing surveys, updated surveys that the council approved, what was it, last month or so? Yeah. Yes. I'm going to poke the bear a little bit before we conclude, and I'm looking at you, Tara, because I get a lot of these complaints and concerns about homeless persons. So are there any questions about homelessness? She's turning red, I'm sorry. She's the expert. Going once, going twice. Yes, sir.
Okay, homeless. I see them everywhere. Where I live, you can tell usually who it is. and where I work in the east side, it's really bad. And just going to work, cutting through town. I try to help when I can. I mean, I don't hand out any money, but if somebody needs a helping hand and I'm going to Starbucks, I'll certainly do that. But, you know, I sometimes I want to say, have you ever thought about this program? Or have you ever thought about, I don't know, the Union Gospel? Or what do I say? Is there any programs that I can mention to them? I mean, that to me, that's the solution, and it's not really going to help everybody, but it's going to help somebody. So
that's where we want to direct them to. The challenge is how do we convince them to seek, those resources? So, Kara, you want to take it from there?
Okay. Well, appreciate the question. I think first of all, I think it is good not to give money. One of the issues that our office frequently deals with is panhandling. And so when folks ask for money at a certain place and they get money, it just increases panhandling. And we know that not all panhandlers are homeless. And so sometimes people wanting to give to help people who are homeless give to panhandlers, but that's not where the money's going. So there's much better ways to give to the organizations. But like you said, pointing people toward resources. So one resource you mentioned is overnight shelter at Presbyterian Night Shelter or Union Gospel Mission. We also have a great day shelter called True Earth Place. It's in the same location on East Lancaster. So even if someone chooses not to sleep in the shelter, they can still visit True Earth during the day and get some services to help them get on track.
Okay. If I had some information more complete, but the other thing is that I do not give out money. I learned my lesson 40 years ago, but what I will do for them, and I say, are you hungry? Do you want some coffee? Hey, I'll go in and buy it for you. So, if they're hungry, I feed them. But if they just want money, no, I don't give out money. But I'd like to give out more because they need to be able to help themselves and they need some resources, I think.
I think you could be a great ambassador for us. I can get your contact information. We have these little things called Pocket Pals. They're just really small, fold up in your pocket. And it just lists places where people experiencing homelessness can get a meal, where they can talk to somebody about a housing assessment, or where they can go to shelter. And so I'm happy to get some of those for you, and that's a good resource to be able to pass out.
Great. If you can get enough of those, that's a great idea. AJ Garcia is the president of Northside Neighborhood Association. He could distribute that to his members too. So,
okay.
Did you do that already? Maybe you did. I don't know.
Oh no, we're just kind of neighbors. So.
Oh well, there you go. Then you know.
Yes, we'll
Perfect.
get some there.
And one last thing, could you also mention the high impact efforts that we're doing?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, happy to. So one of the things that's become of increasing concern is, since COVID, unsheltered homelessness, people who sleep outside in the street, like in their car or under the bridge or behind buildings or alleyways, that's increased. And it's increased in different areas in Fort Worth. So places that didn't used to have that kind of camping have it now. And in places where there was some, there's more. And so one of the things we looked at is we mapped out where are the places in Fort Worth where we're seeing a lot of complaints about these camps. And we identified 7 areas. And one of those areas is Northside Stockyards. And so because we call that a target area, and what we're targeting it for is extra resources. So we're really looking at the intersection of severe mental illness and unsheltered homelessness. Because one of the things we learned is there may be in an area, there may be many unsheltered people, But generally, it's only one or two that are constantly visible and having interactions, negative interactions with law enforcement over and over. So our goal was really to house like people that are really hard to house, right? And so this is done two ways. One, the city allocated funding for a high-level team of medical and psychiatric professionals to be able to go on the street, engage folks, but then help them into housing. That's the other part, is because those medical and psychiatric services are much more effective when somebody's in housing, right? Kind of like Maslow's hierarchy. And then they stay with them. So it's not just someone transitions into apartment and they've got to figure it out. That team stays with them. It is it's an intense program, and it is not for everyone. So our goal is about 80 folks. But we worked very closely. The MPO in this area at that time was Officer Mancada. He made several referrals from folks he had seen in Northside and the Stockyards area for years. And we're currently working on some more Northside referrals. But that program really aims to get people who like you see every day and that are causing disturbances.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm going to get with you, but believe it or not, I don't frequent the Stockyards that much. Because it is in my backyard. I live in the north side, but it's just the traffic is just terrible. But I have gone in there last couple of weekends. Quite frankly, I have not seen any homeless. But you get away from the Stockyards, and I see them. I frequent the Starbucks on Rosedale and Summit. That's where I see several. And again, I work on Rosedale, East Rosedale at Texas Wesleyan, and I see them all the time. And then, of course, I frequent Summer Moon at South Main, and I see them just going down the street. And they don't all look like they're disabled. They're walking. You can tell they're hopeless. So I'd appreciate some information that I could hand out.
Of course. And it was a pilot program, but it showed a lot of success just in the first year. So one of the things that surprised a lot of people is that of the people who were offered housing, 89% accepted it. And when we really measure success by, can we get someone in housing and keep them in housing with enough services? And so far it's early, but so far over 90% of the people that have been housed are still staying in that housing. Because they have those rich services that stay with them and help them. So that's been really encouraging to see how many people are willing to do this and then successfully stay housed.
Are there any other questions? All right, I guess we're wrapping up. Christiane, you want to do the honors?
We so appreciate your engagement on a weeknight. Thank you, Councilmember Flores and staff, and certainly you as residents. We love to hear your input year-round. Please keep your eyes out for more engagement opportunities. Feel free to come to the budget and tax rate public hearing next Tuesday at City Hall at 5:30 if you'd like to speak on the budget. Other than that, have a wonderful night.
Thanks, everybody.